MMA Rants and Raves, UFC 137. George Rush St-Pierre versus Nick Diaz. Guys, let's talk about this fight. Something that's really interesting. GSP has basically, as far as the top part of his division, I mean, it seems like he's facing. It just seems like he's facing the same guys over again. I mean, that's how good he is. I mean, he's definitely the most dominant champion of recent times in the UFC because he's looked so good in all of his fights. I mean, there really was hardly a round that anything happened to him. I mean, even in the Shields fight, I think they gave one round to Shields, but it looked like he won all 5 rounds. He's been that dominant. And there's really nobody out there that they can give to him. So with Jake Shields, at the time he was doing the Ultimate Fighter, GSP that is, and it would just come to be that Shields wouldn't have an opponent. So they gave him an opponent in Campman. He actually had to go through Campman in order to get to GSP. You got to understand something. Shields is an amazing fighter. He's a legend in MMA. I mean, the guy has fought in 2 weight classes. I mean, he defeated some pretty scary guys like Dan Anderson and Carlos Condit. I mean, the guy he's just a great, really tough fighter. Even after the fight against GSP, he was the guy that showed up to the press conference, and GSP was in the hospital. So it just gives you an idea, how tough this guy is, how good he really is. And and I did a vlog on this. I actually thought that Shields should be in the middleweight division. I mean, he did so well, and like I said, the welterweight division is so stacked. I really saw the potential for Shields in the middleweight division, but I'm not going to get into that. I covered that in another vlog. The thing I wanted to talk about is that the point I wanted to make is that there's no fights left for GSP in the welterweight division, as far as a guy that that can really compete with him. So they decided that they should bring in Nick Diaz. But the thing with Nick Diaz is, I don't see him being on the level of Shields. He's a really good fighter. He has a lot of talent. He's definitely a top-ranked welterweight. But Shields, as far as his accomplishments, the guys that he's defeated are great fighters, legends. He's defeated legends, and that's why he is a legend. To be a legend, you have to beat a legend, and he sure did. Now, the thing with Diaz, he's a really good fighter, and he's had some tough opponents. The only thing is that he hasn't beaten a good wrestler. He hasn't beaten a very good wrestler. A fight that comes to mind, right, that he's faced was Diego Sanchez, and he lost that fight. All right, it's the takedown defense. It's just, that's the issue with Diaz. I mean, you could take him down. Now, it may not really be an issue because, he likes jiu-jitsu. He is a Gracie jiu-jitsu black belt, which is important. So maybe he doesn't work at it that much because he wants to get taken down in a way because, he wants to display his jiu-jitsu, which is pretty good. He has many wins by submission. So, that's just the way he fights. He'll go to the ground, he'll stand up. He is a well-rounded fighter. But the thing is with GSP is that he's really tough. And he has his own repertoire of jiu-jitsu skills. I mean, he has wins by submission himself. And, he's really good on the ground. And he's going to be looking for submissions from the top. And jiu-jitsu on the top, there's an advantage from the jiu-jitsu on the bottom. There's certain things that you can do on the bottom. When you have a guy on top of you, there's a lot of other things you can do besides jiu-jitsu. He can mix up his strikes with submission attempts. So, as far as dealing with GSP, he's just, if Diego Sanchez was tough, he's going to have to deal with GSP's wrestling, which is off the charts. He's probably one of the best out there. As far as closing the distance and shooting for takedowns, he's definitely the best. He moves with such quickness, and he has such power. Even against, in the Shields fight, remember when he took Shields on, he just dropped him so hard. He's so strong and so quick. It's going to be very tough to contend with that. And, people are talking about the fight. They're saying, oh, Diaz is a guy that can get in GSP's face. He won't be able to evade him as much. Well, the thing is, GSP can take this to the ground. And I'm actually going to argue with that. A lot of people are saying that. I actually think that Nick Diaz's best chance to win this fight is actually on the ground, because he can display his jiu-jitsu. GSP will be in his proximity. And the other thing about Diaz is he's got a great chin. That's one thing he has over GSP. He has a granite chin. He's super tough. He can take a lot of punishment. I mean, he's one of these zombie type like fighters. Remember when Paul Daly hit him? When you get hit by Paul Daly, it's not a good thing. Well, for a lot of fighters, it hasn't been. And it looked like that fight may have been stopped. And he comes back to life. He's one of these guys that can come back, and he actually reversed the fortune of the fight against Daly and won the fight. So he's one of those guys that are just super tough. So if you think about it, if he's on the ground, he could take some ground and pound from GSP possibly and still work submissions, and he'll be in his proximity, maybe work something there. And it is a 5-round fight, so he's going to have a lot of opportunities to do that. And the other thing about Diaz is his cardio is really good, so I don't really see him gassing. Depends how tough GSP is on him, but then again, GSP is one of the best cardio machines in mixed martial arts, maybe the best. I mean, he never gets tired in fights. So, I mean, it has the makings to go the distance. Of course, anything can happen. We can see it ending earlier, but I just think that GSP poses a matchup problem for Diaz. I mean, his wrestling is just really good. I see him being able to take this to the ground, and he's going to be able to work his ground and pound. He throws those really violent knee strikes, and he's also going to be working his own submissions. So, and being from the top position is going to be tougher. So, I think stylistically, it's a problematic matchup for Diaz. And so I'm going to go with a prediction here. I'm going to say that GSP continues his reign at welterweight and is going to win this fight. And being the fact that they got Diaz now, the question is, there's really no opponents left for GSP. He's cleaned out his division. I mean, there's no point of him facing, new other guys, and they're all really talented. I mean, I said to myself that the welterweight division in the UFC is the most stacked. That's what makes GSP that much better, because he's so well above the pack of the most stacked division in the UFC, in my opinion. I mean, and then there's always, the talk, the main question, will he fight Anderson Silva? It looks like it's not going to happen. But whether he fights him or not, I don't think it really matters, because I think GSP may go up to middleweight, and if he does, he'll fight some other really good fighter at middleweight. I mean, he's going to look for a challenge. I mean, I think I heard him mention in an interview that he's looking for the super fight. And he said after that he's going to retire. He's still young, he's about 30 years old, but he's a really cerebral fighter. I mean, he is very smart. He's not going to continue to fight just for fighting. He wants motivation. He said he's not going to fight for money. And he said, I mean, he mentioned that, if you can continue to fight and you're not fighting for something, the motivation, then you could lose. So nobody wants to lose. That's like the worst thing. So the question is, when is that super fight? Is Diaz the super fight? I don't see it being a super fight for GSP. Against Diaz is not a super fight. The super fight people are talking about is against Anderson Silva, but if it's not Anderson Silva, I mean, if Anderson Silva still manages to retain his title, because he's older than GSP, and who knows how longer he's going to continue to fight, that I don't know. But if there's a different champion at middleweight, it could be GSP may step up and fight that guy. So that's a possibility, because that would be a super fight. Because if there is a champion, that means that he was able to beat Anderson Silva or basically fight another top guy to get the vacated belt. But this is all speculation, because I have no idea what's going to happen as far as Anderson Silva is concerned in the middleweight division. But it's interesting how they gave Diaz an instant title shot, because he's a very good fighter, and there's really nobody else for him to face him at welterweight. So we'll just have to see how it unfolds. I would like to know your thoughts about the fight. Please leave your comments below the video, rate this video, and subscribe. And thank you for tuning in.